Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Mike here, and welcome back to my Modern OpenGL series. In today's lesson, we're going to continue our refactoring of our graphics code, or our little graphics framework that we've been creating, and ultimately our goal is going to be able to understand how to render not one, but two meshes. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive in here. And basically what we've got here, let's go ahead and resume from what we have last time here. I'll go ahead and just show our window here, and let's go ahead and give this a run. And let's see if I can just tab over to my window here. I'll bring it in here. And this is basically our graphics application that we have here. I'm moving the mouse around. I can move forward and backwards and perform some transformations. And we'll go ahead and take a look at this code here. So if you haven't been following along with the series, you probably need to follow along at this point, but we'll do a little code review as we always do. And I can hit escape to exit here. Now, here's the structure of our project. Again, we've kept things pretty clean. I know I'm putting a lot of things in the main.cpp. That's fine. We can refactor them later, but it is nice to just kind of overview everything in one file for now. Now, what we are going to do, though, today is let's go ahead and take a look at our source and our main here and figure out how we can get actually two objects rendering today. So from the last lesson, we basically did a refactoring where we have all of our important stuff, all of our globals in this app class here, or this struct here. So everything's just public. And this is holding stuff that's generally sort of global data, but you can still have an instance of it. For instance, one camera per application. You've got one shader pipeline here. Again, we could go ahead and have multiple eventually, or have some sort of managing class for that. That's the type of abstractions we can add later. But basically, this is just holding the state of our app. Is it running or not? What's the size? What's the window, the OpenGL context, and so on. And then last time, we also worked on a Mesh 3D class here. Now, the important part of the Mesh 3D class was, again, to get rid of some of our global variables and just have the vertex array object, which holds the sort of state, the vertex buffer object, and the index buffer object if we so choose. Now, again, with our Mesh 3D class, we might have some considerations, like, for instance, is it going to be something that's just a bunch of data, so we can just do GL draw arrays, or is it going to be indexed? Again, those are decisions we can make later on once we get this working. And then we have some important uniforms here for controlling things like offset, rotate, and scale right now, which are the values that are changing when I, for instance, move with the arrow keys or otherwise rotate the shape here. So we're going to want to improve on this abstraction a little bit here, thinking about how we create more meshes and how we place them with the actual transformations. Because right now we have these offset values, but maybe we could think of some different ways to transform things. Okay, so anyways, let's go ahead down to our main here and just do a brief code review. So again, we've got some code to initialize the program. Again, that's just going to be a C function. We pass app in. Vertex specification right now is for our one mesh here. We're probably going to want to rename this and then have some way to create meshes. Now we could do this as part of the struct, as part of a constructor, or we could just have C functions, for instance, which we pass resources in. The choice is really yours for how you want to do that. I'm going to do more of a C style approach here just because it's a little bit more portable across languages, and there might be other reasons why you like to just have that sort of abstraction. I mean, this is just sort of an object-oriented C style here. Then we'll create our graphics pipeline or any shaders or resources that we need. And then, of course, execute our main loop, which is going to draw, well, however many meshes that we have here. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it here. So again, our cleanup functions. Here's our main loop, which is input, pre-draw, draw, and then executing the swap operation from our front and back buffers. And let's see here. Then we've got some input here, some helper functions here, a draw function. Now this is a candidate here, just immediately as I'm going through here, that we probably want to do something with our mesh. For instance, pass in a particular mesh here. So let's just go ahead and kind of refactor these as we go here and collect some of these functions. Let's do a mesh 3D here. And I can either pass in a pointer or I could pass in a reference to this mesh. Again, the C style way is going to be to pass in a pointer here. So let's just go ahead and just call that mesh here. And then I could just do mesh, the vertex array object. I can do some null checks here. If mesh not equal to, null, pointer, something like that here. And then I could just return, for instance. We might want to have some safety checks for these types of things here, but that's the idea here. So this will just basically set active our mesh by binding to the vertex array object. And that's just going to do GL draw elements. So we are going to want to maybe have some control over this, meaning getting like the mesh data. Is this a GL draw arrays or GL draw elements? But again, let's assume we're just drawing quads for now. And we might also want to change the particular pipeline that we're drawing. So again, we could just make our draw mesh very generically take the mesh and then the pipeline that we're going to use to draw with it. So let's go ahead and kind of move this up here. Let's see here. And I'm going to update our comments, draw mesh, and think about that little design decision here. Again, that's kind of the nice thing about just having functions here. I mean, OpenGL already is just a C-based API, so we always have to remember that. So we don't want to, you know, overcomplicate things sometimes of adding too many layers of abstraction. Anyways, let me see. I'm just scrolling up here. Let's find our... I guess it's just going to be in the vertex specification. I just kind of want to mesh 3D. Let's see. Where is our struct here for that? There it is. Line 42. So let's go ahead and put some of these helper functions below here. And then I've got my global. So again, maybe this will be the lesson where we refactor things just a little bit here. Anyways, we'll think about doing that. So one of the design decisions, again, that we could say is per mesh. We call GL use program, and it'll take in a pipeline that we want here. So let's go ahead and just do that. Let's go ahead and, yeah, let's just call it up here. Set our pipeline setup, which graphics pipeline we are going to use. And I'll do GL use program. And let's just go ahead and call, like, GLU int, the pipeline. And that's it here. So basically this is the idea here. I'm going to add a few notes here. Note, we per mesh choose the graphics pipeline that we want to use. Generally, this is not very efficient to change state, and that means the pipelines very frequently, okay? But, you know, for learning purposes or flexibility, this is interesting, or useful. This is, let's just say useful, just as we're learning this stuff here. So again, all I'm saying is, you know, ideally you'd have a bunch of meshes that you wanted to draw, and you just call, you know, use this pipeline with this vertex shader and fragment shader or whatever, and then just draw all of them. So you're not switching every time and turning on and off. I'm just going to do this for simplicity because I think it works well. But again, that's why I have this note here, just to make things kind of work nicely here. Okay. Now there might be other things that we want to do with the mesh, like have control over the elements. But again, maybe we'll revisit that in a later part here. Okay. Now let's go ahead and keep exploring our code. We want to refactor a few more things here so we can ultimately draw multiple meshes here. And again, just think about our software architecture a little bit as we go here. Let's see, we've got our initialization. Aha, this vertex specification. So I'm going to call this something else here. So setting up your geometry during the vertex specification step per mesh here, okay? And we should just probably call this like mesh data or something, like setup mesh data. Maybe mesh data vertex specification here. I don't mind long names, they're a little bit annoying. I sort of want to start everything out with mesh just so we can see them here. But again, the idea will be that we just pass in a mesh and we're able to specify what sort of data that we have here. Now again, for this lesson here, I don't know if I want to start passing in different types of data here. We'll think about that. That could be another lesson here. Because ultimately I just want to draw two things here. But again, you can see that we have this flexibility of per mesh. It's setting up the individual vertex array and the buffers and so on. And again, these are the types of things, if you want to get super efficient, you would try to pack maybe multiple objects in the same buffer object. But again, don't care about that for this type of lesson, but just want to mention those things if you want to know how the pros might think about some of this stuff. So this otherwise looks good to me. It is doing a lot of work, but that's okay. So let's just go ahead and move it up. Let's go ahead and highlight this. And let's move it with the rest of our mesh functions here, or our one other mesh function. Let's see here. All right, so we will have mesh data vertex specification. I'm just going to call it mesh data. Mesh data, or maybe just mesh create is better. Mesh create is probably a more meaningful term here. Draw mesh and mesh create. And I'm actually going to list these out in sort of the order that you would use them. Let's see how we think about that here, because you're going to want to create the mesh first and then draw the mesh. Again, this is just me being a little bit precise with how I'm setting up these things here. Okay, and now let's see where else were we doing interesting stuff with our meshes beyond drawing them. Okay, so here's some error checking code here. The shader compilation, again, we'll have to move some of this stuff into different files, so we're not scrolling forever, but again, it's a good overview of our program. Pre-draw is kind of interesting. Now, pre-draw is where we are setting up what we want to do with our meshes here, basically updating the transform. So let's think about this here. Again, this is something where I could pass in a mesh here. And let's just go ahead and call this mesh update. I'm going to pass in a mesh 3D. Let me make sure I did that right. Yep. I'm going to pass it as a pointer and just call it mesh. And let's begin refactoring a little bit here. So now I'll be able to create multiple objects here. And we can see that we're accessing the appropriate members here. Let's see here. I'm going to do these one at a time here just so we can kind of recap what we've been doing. So that looks good here. Now this is kind of interesting here because this is part of our mesh update and we're using some shader here. Actually, maybe this was the right spot for me to pass in what pipeline we're actually going to use here. Yeah, let's think about that. I might need to refactor that a little bit here. Okay, that's okay. I'll come back and revisit this in a moment here. Let's just get all of our values updated here. Let's try to get everything sort of fitting on one screen. There we go. Let's see here. Okay, all of our global mesh stuff here. Mesh, use scale. I guess I just put uniform scale here just so it was nicer to write here. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. Mesh mu scale. And let's repeat that here. Oh, let's do a dot here and another one. And let's delete until there. Oops, I guess it didn't work. Alrighty, anyways. Let's see if we type that out correctly. 1, 2, 3, I think so. All right, there we go. Get rid of a temporary there, that's fine. I mean, the compiler would optimize that, but again, that was just to make my life easy, I guess. All right, let's see what else we got here. So even with these values that we have here, things like the model matrix, these are probably going to be things that we want to actually have as part of our mesh class. So again, this could be something that we move in here to our mesh class, this model attribute. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. Well, let's finish our little mesh transformation here. Let me make sure I got gmesh almost everywhere. Let's see here. Mesh. And let's go ahead and continue here. Mesh offset. There we go. I might miss one of these, but as you're doing your refactoring, you'll make sure to get all of them, I'm sure. Let's see here. Okay, so if I go ahead and scroll down, now the rest of this stuff is basically to do with like the perspective transformation. And to be honest, this is going to belong in our camera class, so we'll move that in there later on here. But again, these are going to be things that we're going to want to retrieve and ultimately set up in our shader here. Okay, so we got a little bit of refactoring yet to go. There's going to be a few refactoring videos here as you're watching this. Let's go ahead and give this a compile. Let's see if I've messed up anything here. There should be a couple errors because I've renamed things, yeah, like pre-draw to mesh update, but let's go ahead and call this mesh update. Now, I do want to think a little bit about what to do with this state here. So again, there's a few design decisions that we have to make about, again, just controlling how we want to draw this, and if we want to do this on a per mesh state. Usually we don't want to, be doing this at per mesh, but again, as I noted, that's something that we can optimize away later on here. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix a few of these bugs here. Let's see if we can get something compiling here. Let's see. Let's go ahead and just copy this function. Oop. Mesh update. Let me make sure I got all of it here. Let's see here. V and then percent selects there. Okay. And we'll go towards the top of our screen here. And mesh create. Okay. Mesh update would be the next thing that we'd want to call. And let me make sure that the comments are relatively consistent here. Typically we'll use this note. Okay. Sort of state for our mesh. And we can get rid of this now, these comments here. I am gonna refactor this to, I need to think about this a little bit, because we want to be binded to the pipeline that we're actually going to be using when we use GL use program pipeline before we do our update, and then we'll just call draw. I think that's fair. We might, again, want to think a little bit about this, meaning that I don't know. I guess we could pass it in twice for now. Now, that could cause some problems here where I guess we just kind of want to attach a mesh to a specific pipeline. I mean, that's another way to do it here. Anytime I'm getting this duplication here, we could just have like a specific function here and then store in our mesh class what sort of pipeline that we're using here. We could do that. I think that's fair enough. So let's actually just on the shader side here. GLU int pipeline equals 0. So this is going to be, this is the graphics pipeline used with this mesh. Okay. Let's just do that. That way we don't have to worry about passing in the update function and the draw like different pipelines and so on. That'll just make our life a little bit easier here. So then I can just say use pipeline and pipeline. All right, and then when we draw our mesh, we will go ahead and get rid of that. Don't need, well, I'll just leave this in here for safety. I'll put a note here. Might be redundant. Well, that's okay. Yeah, set up the graphics pipeline we're going to use here. We could go ahead and eliminate any duplicate state that we have later on. That's no problem here. Okay, so I'm a little bit more happy with that. That's good here. And then I guess when we create our mesh, we could go ahead and set the pipeline here. Mesh create and the pipeline. Set pipeline, okay? Set up your geometry. Set up which shader pipeline you'll use with your mesh. And you could have some different functions, for instance, for changing the pipeline or these types of things. In various game engines, you'll see things like the shader, other different state things, maybe be like different resources that you can attach to meshes. Again, this is just one way of doing it here. Graphics pipeline setup. And let me go ahead and just say that this is effectively our constructor. All right. So I'm just going to say pipeline to pipeline. There we go. All right. Let's see what else we got here. So we got mesh update, mesh draw, and draw mesh, which is going to be named mesh draw here because I wanted to be more consistent in my naming. And it makes it easier when I use my IntelliSense here to have everything just begin with capital M here. Okay, let's get that replaced in our game loop here. Again, we're going to have to keep scrolling down here. All right, to reinitialize our program. Let's see here. In our inputs, we don't really need to do anything, I don't think, because we just have state within our mesh. Let's go ahead and see here. Moving our camera up. Let's see. Where was I updating anything? Oh yeah, okay. I got rid of the global values for offsets for moving our objects. Yeah, and we've had this to-do message here for a little while if you've been following this series. So we could get rid of that at some point here. Okay, let's just go ahead and do our mesh update. And that's going to be what was it? Gmesh1. Gmesh1, so that's the importance of naming things. So our IntelliSense in our searching is easy. So update our meshes prior to drawing. And let's go ahead and do our mesh draw. That's going to be Gmesh1. And I think I'm passing in the address here because we want a pointer here, so make sure that we do that as well. Let's see here. Okay. Let's go ahead and give this a compile. Let's see how we're doing on our errors. Okay. Doing a little bit better here. Let's go ahead and scroll around a little bit. So 646. Okay, this is going to be mesh create. Okay, so I fix up that one. I'm going to do these one at a time here. Mesh create not declared here at line, what is this, 77? Okay. 646 here. Mesh create, and well, what is our create graphics pipeline here? We could actually do these out of order here, I guess, because we're going to need to attach a pipeline to our mesh. I don't know. Let's think about that here. Create graphics pipeline here. Now, what does this return us here? Nothing. I guess we have our gapp mgraphics pipeline shader program. All right, that's what we could use here. Okay, let's see here. Line 646. We could just pass that in here. That's fine. That's not going to draw anything until we actually draw anyway. So let's see, 264. This is going to be mesh and pipeline. Okay, I suspect we're going to have that issue a couple times here. Still not finding it here. M pipeline here has no member M pipeline. Well, I bet it does here. Did I spell it with a capital L? Let's see. M pipeline. No, that is part of Mesh 3D, so that looks okay to me. 264 here. Maybe we need to go up to 210 here. This could be an issue of a missing right parentheses that's messing up things. All right. Line 79. What do we got here? Oh, that's what it's complaining about, this pipeline here. Okay, let's see here. GL uint is just missing a capital L. Okay. I wonder if that's the same thing. Did I do that same thing in my mesh here? Yep, that's why. Complaining about the type. Now we should have it there. That should get rid of a bunch of errors. Line 194. gapp.m screen height here. Let's see. gapp was not declared into the scope. Did you mean app? Let's see where we are here. Oh, we're in mesh update. Oh, I see. I don't have gapp yet. Where are my globals? Here it is. That's Yeah, we're gonna have to do something about these global variables here. It's probably fine to have the G app be something that we just look into. I might have to separate these out here. I can move them back up. That's fine for now. Let's see here. Just gotta move them over all my mesh functions, but not my struct, I guess. Because again, we'll get a little bit more organized with the code once we split things into files. But I do like to refactor things and not necessarily have a whole ton of different files here. And then let's see here at line 207. This is going to be our mesh pipeline here. Okay, I think this is called in mesh update. Yep. So it compiles. It should compile. All right. And it should run. And let's see what happens here. Let's see. I got an alt tab over here. And nothing here. Okay, so something has disappeared. What have we done wrong here? It's probably just that issue with the pipeline being set incorrectly. I mean, anytime you can't see anything, that's obviously a problem. Let's go down to our main here. I think this is the issue here, where we've got this mesh crate. I'm attaching it to this pipeline shader program, which is initialized to 0. Then I create it, and it sets it to whatever the handle is for this, but we never update it here, so that's probably the issue. I guess these are going to have to be like, functions that you set up in one stage at a time here. I mean, a good function should really have one job here. Mesh create really has to do with just the geometry creation, so that's probably a better API for us here. So okay, again, we'll just have to have a function here called set pipeline, as I mentioned here. Mesh set pipeline. Okay, and let's think about this here. Mesh update. I'll put it under here. We'll need to think about if we like this API or not. Mesh set pipeline. And our API is needs to set the graphics pipeline before we draw. Okay, and that's all this function is going to be here. Void mesh set pipeline, and I'll take a G capital L uint pipeline, and it's the setter function. Take in our mesh 3D pointer for our mesh here. Okay, let's see if that's the fix or if I mess something else up. So we're gonna have like this step 3.5 here. For each of our meshes, set them to a pipeline. All right, mesh set pipeline, and this is gmesh1, and I guess it's gonna be gapp dot what is it, graphics pipeline program here. Let's go to the very top here. mgraphics pipeline shader program. Okay, you gotta remember that here. mgraphics, or just type 2 keys. There you go. All right, let's see if that yields us a better result. It is compiling, it is running, and not showing up here. Okay, let's see what else we've done in our changes here. And this is a classic, going through the refactoring. Nothing shows up on our screen, so no problem there. Let me make sure I'm calling the mesh update here. Okay, so we got our cleanup functions. Again, we're gonna have to have like a mesh delete here. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's grab these two. What I want is mesh delete, and then this is going to be gmesh1, the address, and then I need to write a little delete function. Let's go to the top here, and under mesh crate, I will call it, what did I call it? Mesh delete. Let's paste it in here. And let's call mesh delete. Oh boy, I really spelled that wrong. All right, let's see. Erases a mesh in GPU memory. Okay, that's what it's doing here on the GPU. Mesh delete here. Mesh 3D. Okay. And let's see here. Wow, I really messed that up here. That's okay. There we go. So let's go ahead and compile that here. Just another little cleanup, one at a time here. Let's see here. Oh, it doesn't like this. Invalid M vertex buffer object. Invalid conversion from GLU int unsigned ints to const GLU int. Oh, interesting here. I didn't know these delete functions took in const here. That's kind of interesting. I guess I could cast them to const. That's one thing that we can do in C++. Let's see if we can do that here. Const cast, and we want to do this to a const GL uint pointer. Oh, interesting. Well, let's see here. It wants the address of this value, of this handle here. Interesting. Okay. I think that's okay here. That's going to retrieve the value. Yeah, I guess that's okay. That's a little bit weird. I guess because this is like an array that it's actually deleting from. Maybe it's dereferencing inside of that function here to actually figure out the values. So if we just pass in one integer, that's okay. An array of size 1 for the integer. Okay. All right. Anyways, it's still not going to show anything. We still haven't fixed our bug yet, even if I move the mouse around here. Let's see. Let's figure out why nothing is showing up here. So let's see. First and foremost, did we do our mesh create? We'll check that out because that's our new process of populating things. We do need to call mesh set pipeline, which I believe we do, and we do need to call mesh update in our update loop here. Now let's see if we did that here. And I do have mesh draw. It's using the right pipeline, so that should be okay. Let's go ahead and keep scrolling down here. And scrolling down. Let's see, input. Okay, we handled that here. And our main loop, we got a mesh update. So that looks okay. We do have our mesh draw here for the same mesh, which is okay. So this looks okay here. Let's see if we've just done something else wonky here. So I think we've set this up okay. So let's go ahead and start from the top here. And let's clear this out here and have a look. And I took a quick pause here. Let me get a mesh draw here. I think this is the issue here. Mesh not equal to null pointer. That's not right here. Yay. Okay. Let's go ahead and make sure we save that. Let's go ahead and give this a run here. And let's go ahead and compile this one. That's looking better here. So now we've got our one quad back up and running here, and we can move around here on our screen. Let's go ahead and see if we can change these values here just a little bit here and get a second mesh drawing here. So how are we going to do this here? Well, I'm going to save this for another video where we have a separate transform. But I think what I want to do is just for the mesh for now have like a well, let's go ahead and just create a little transform here. And we can adjust this later on here. Let's just call it transform, and it's just going to be a GLM vec3 here, and I'll just call it position here. Position translation. Let's just call it translation here. There we go. And let's go ahead and give this a member here. transform, and transform. And basically I'm going to get rid of offset here. And then I'll just set, manually for the mesh, the transform for the X, Y, and the Z here. And then we should be able to see two different meshes here. Now, let's go ahead into our mesh update function here. Mesh update. And make the modifications here appropriately for our mesh offset, which is now mesh transform, mesh m transform dot x here, dot x, y, and z. It's going to be the same thing, mesh m transform dot y, and mesh m transform dot z. Okay, so no more u offset here. So we also have to think about maybe if we just want to move this model matrix into our actual mesh. Again, we can get into that later here, I guess. But let's just go ahead and try this for now. Let me go ahead and I think what we probably want to do here, let's just go ahead and scroll down here. And when we create our mesh, let's just go ahead and set the gmesh1.m transform.x, y, and z. Just to be explicit, we'll improve this API later on. And this was what, negative 2.0, something like that. So let's go ahead and see if that change did the trick that we want here. Oops, let's see here. What did we do here? M transform.x. Oh, yes. Because I called it translate. All right, right. Let's actually think about that API just a little bit here. You know what? Why don't we just go ahead and just call it X, Y, and Z for the purpose of this tutorial here before we move our model matrix into the transform. I think that'll just make our lives a little bit easier here. There we go. Okay, so yeah, that should give us the same looking thing here. All right, that looks pretty reasonable. Move forward and back. And then let's go ahead and do it. So let's go ahead and find gmesh1, wherever we created it. Let's create gmesh2. Again, I'm just making these as globals for now so that we can just have something to play with. And then we're just going to basically repeat this code here. Okay. Except this is going to be for gmesh2. Let's see if that goes. There we go. 2. And let's just go ahead and push this one a little bit to the left here, about 2 units here. And then we will go ahead and set our pipeline for the same thing. And then we are going to have to do our mesh update and our mesh draw twice here. So, I mean, you can see where this is going as far as the different patterns that we're going to want to have to take care of. Let's find wherever we do this. There we go. But we could basically just have a collection that we iterate through and do our mesh draw and updates here. Okay, so there we are. 2 separate objects. Let's see if this just works here. Let's see what happened here. Let's bring in our window. Let's see, did we get 2 different objects offset? Nope, I have 1 here. Let's see if I made a mistake somewhere in our code while I was doing that super fast, because again, this has been a pretty long video, so we want to go ahead and wrap things up eventually here. So it looks like this is okay. I have my different transforms. That's fine. Here, let's make it a little bit easier. I should see one behind the other. And that is gmesh2. Okay, and it's been constructed. We only need to create our graphics pipeline once because it's going to be shared amongst these 2 meshes here. So no problem there. Okay, let's see. What do they do in mesh update? Let's see here. Update mesh 2. And then draw mesh 2. So that should be okay. Now let me make sure in update I wasn't clearing, because there might be some hidden state in there. That could be the issue. Let's see here. Mesh update. I think we got too much hidden state going on in here. Yeah, we gotta let's move some of this stuff here. Yeah, because I'm doing the clear here. All this obvious stuff. None of this stuff has to do with meshes here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this stuff here. And again, this was the pre-draw function. but that's essentially the same thing as you'd have in your game loop where you're doing input, update, and then draw. So yeah, let's get rid of all that stuff here. There we go. Now we should have a proper, let's see, in our main loop. And let's go ahead and handle, before our drawing, all the drawing state, or rather after our update, do all of our draw calls. We've made this a little bit bigger, but that's okay. That's fine with me. Let's see here. Now let's see here. Let's bring in our window. Let's see if that did the trick for us. Now let's see, I've only still got one object here. So I wonder if that little offset thing is not working here. What's going on? Let's see here. Mesh 2, mesh 2. So let's go ahead in our main loop again, because I suspect that's maybe where we're having some issues. Okay, I'm doing the update, which should just be setting the position. This could actually be the issue here. Let me see here. Let me think about this here. Okay, let's go ahead and this is going to be the top of our loop here. And let's think about what's going on in update and draw. So this is another kind of tricky spot here. Let's go to our update function. So I'm saying to use this program, set these uniforms with our particular mesh here, so sort of preparing things. And we're getting the uniform locations and all this sort of stuff. That's very, very nice here. But then we go into another update for our object, and then we're trying to figure out, well, we haven't drawn anything, right? So this is kind of the tricky thing here. Let's go to our main loop. What if I did an update, and then I drawed, and I did another update, and then I drew, okay? And this isn't the typical way that we want to do things in our game engine. We want to update all the data that's not going to be on the GPU, right? Those uniforms that are shared here. And then we want to do our draw here. Okay, so again, we might need to do a little bit of refactoring where, I mean, update in practice is actually closer to, yeah, what we wanted to do with the pre-draw. Like we change something in our input that updates the position, and then we sort of like get the pre-draw ready. So we might, again, refactor that back to pre-draw, because I actually kind of like that. And I should say it's like, instead of calling it pre-draw, it's more like set uniform values, what we want to actually do here. So this, I think, should fix most of our issues. And if I bring this in here, it looks like it does here, okay? Now, it doesn't fix everything. We've got some weird, like, overlapping issue here, and that has to do with our depth test and stuff, but we do have two objects here. And they are slowly rotating, because I guess I just set them that way. But we finally have two objects rotating, which is excellent here. So anyways, folks, with that said, thanks for hanging with me this lesson here. We did a bunch of live coding, live refactoring, and we're getting closer to a nice sort of API with these sort of C functions here. Now, again, if you prefer this in C++, you can do this. And of course, you can still use these functions here and wrap them yet in another class that'll call mesh create in your constructor and mesh delete in your destructor if you like. So anyways, folks, with that said, let me remind you that this series is available on courses.msha.io if you want to follow along with every lesson. This is kind of a series that keeps building on itself, so that's not a bad idea. If you're struggling with any of the programming stuff that I'm doing, I do have C++ courses here, and of course my other language series as well. So anyways, folks, I had a lot of fun here creating this little program here. We now have two objects in OpenGL, and hopefully we stumbled upon enough of the different pitfalls, like keeping track of when your uniforms are updated, or making sure that you've set your pipeline before drawing it, and that pipeline that was, when it was created, you actually had a value, a GLU int, to actually reference here when you're actually doing your draw. So, that should be hopefully interesting enough. I think, again, we'll probably start working on next either the transform class to kind of improve that a little bit, and then we'll probably have to refactor our code finally. When we're getting about to 1,000 lines of code, that's about when we have to start maybe compacting some of our code into different files, just so we're not scrolling all over the place. But again, hopefully we want to keep that mental model of what we've got in this program. Anyways, here, it's kind of cool to see two rotating shapes here. Maybe we'll start creating a small little world here soon enough. Anyways, folks, with that said, thanks as always for your time and attention and patience. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next.